Egypt's foreign policy has long been anchored in the stability of its immediate neighborhood. This stability is not just a matter of regional peace, but is deeply intertwined with Egypt's own national security and economic prosperity. The Levant, a region that includes Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine, is particularly crucial in this regard. The Levant, encompassing Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine, holds immense strategic significance for Cairo. This region acts as a geopolitical crossroads linking North Africa with the broader Middle East. Its stability or instability can have ripple effects that reach far beyond its borders, impacting trade routes, migration patterns, and even global energy markets. It serves as a buffer zone, a gateway to the Arab heartland, and a critical arena for projecting Egyptian influence. Historically, Egypt has seen the Levant as a natural extension of its sphere of influence, a region where it can exert soft and hard power to shape outcomes favorable to its interests. This is why developments in the Levant are closely monitored by Egyptian policymakers. The ongoing Syrian civil war, therefore, represents not just a humanitarian catastrophe, but also a direct threat to Egypt's national security interests. The conflict has led to a massive displacement of people, creating a refugee crisis that has strained neighboring countries and could potentially affect Egypt as well. Moreover, the war has provided a breeding ground for extremist groups, which pose a direct threat to regional stability. Egypt's primary goal in Syria is to prevent the conflict from spilling over its borders and further destabilizing the region. This involves not only military measures but also diplomatic efforts to support a political solution to the Syrian crisis. Egypt has been actively involved in various international forums aimed at resolving the conflict, emphasizing the need for a unified and stable Syria. The rise of extremist groups such as ISIS during the Syrian conflict served as a stark reminder of the potential consequences of unchecked chaos. These groups have exploited the power vacuum in Syria to establish strongholds from which they can launch attacks not only within Syria, but also in neighboring countries, including Egypt. The threat of terrorism is a constant concern for Egyptian authorities, who have ramped up security measures to counter this menace. A fragmented Syria, rife with sectarian violence and extremist enclaves, would have dire implications for Egypt's own internal security, potentially emboldening militant groups operating within its borders, particularly in the Sinai Peninsula. The Sinai has been a hotspot for militant activity, and a destabilized Syria could exacerbate this problem by providing ideological and logistical support to these groups. Beyond immediate security concerns, Egypt also has a vested interest in preserving Syria's territorial integrity. A unified Syria is seen as essential for regional stability. Egypt has consistently advocated for a political solution that maintains Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity, opposing any attempts to partition the country along sectarian or ethnic lines. A partitioned Syria, carved up along sectarian or ethnic lines, would set a dangerous precedent for the region, potentially fueling separatist movements in other Arab states. This could lead to a domino effect where other countries in the region face similar pressures, further destabilizing an already volatile area. Egypt therefore sees the unity of Syria as a linchpin for broader regional stability. Moreover, a weakened and divided Syria would be more susceptible to foreign interference, potentially drawing in regional and global powers in a zero-sum competition that could further destabilize the region. This could lead to proxy wars where external powers support different factions within Syria, turning the country into a battleground for broader geopolitical rivalries. For Egypt, preventing such a scenario is crucial for maintaining regional peace and security. Egypt's strategic calculus in Syria hinges on the imperative of restoring a stable and functional state, a goal that has been central to its foreign policy in the region. The Egyptian government views stability in Syria as crucial not only for the Syrian people but also for the broader Middle East. A stable Syria can act as a buffer against the spread of extremism and can help in curbing the refugee crisis that has affected neighboring countries including Egypt, albeit not necessarily under Bashar al-Assad's continued rule. While Assad has been a controversial figure, Egypt's primary concern is the establishment of a government that can maintain order and provide for its citizens. The focus is on the functionality of the state, rather than the individual who leads it. While Egypt has refrained from explicitly calling for Assad's ouster, it recognizes that a sustainable peace requires a political solution that addresses the grievances of the Syrian people. This involves acknowledging the legitimate demands of various factions within Syria, including those who have been marginalized or oppressed. Egypt believes that only through inclusive dialogue can a lasting peace be achieved. Egypt's efforts have focused on promoting dialogue between the Syrian government and moderate opposition groups, aiming to pave the way for a negotiated settlement. This approach is rooted in Egypt's own experiences with conflict resolution and its belief in the power of diplomacy. By facilitating conversations between opposing sides, Egypt hopes to create a framework for peace that can be supported by the international community. Cairo's approach to the Syrian crisis has been marked by a degree of pragmatism, often diverging from the stances of its Gulf allies, who have been staunch supporters of the Syrian opposition. This pragmatic stance is driven by Egypt's assessment of the on-ground realities and its long-term strategic interests. While Gulf states have pushed for a more aggressive stance against Assad, Egypt has opted for a more balanced approach, seeking to mediate rather than escalate the conflict. Egypt has maintained communication channels with the Assad regime, viewing dialogue as essential for de-escalating the conflict and facilitating humanitarian access. These communication channels have allowed Egypt to play a role in negotiating ceasefires and ensuring that aid reaches those in need. The humanitarian aspect of Egypt's involvement is a key component of its strategy, as it seeks to alleviate the suffering of the Syrian people while working towards a political solution. This pragmatic approach has drawn criticism from some quarters, but Egypt maintains that it is the most viable path towards a lasting solution. Critics argue that engaging with the Assad regime legitimizes his rule, but Egypt counters that without dialogue, the conflict will only continue to escalate. The Egyptian government believes that its approach, though controversial, is necessary to bring about a resolution that can end the violence and begin the process of rebuilding Syria. Egypt's involvement in Syria has extended beyond diplomatic efforts. The Egyptian military has also played a role, providing support to the Syrian army in its fight against extremist groups. This military involvement is seen as a necessary measure to combat terrorism and stabilize the region. Cairo has provided logistical support to the Syrian army, sharing intelligence and reportedly even conducting airstrikes against extremist groups operating in Syria. This military cooperation underscores Egypt's commitment to combating terrorism and its recognition of the Syrian army's role in this fight. By supporting the Syrian military, Egypt aims to prevent the further spread of extremist ideologies and ensure that state institutions remain intact. This support reflects Egypt's recognition of the Syrian army's role in combating terrorism and preventing the collapse of state institutions. The stability of Syria is seen as integral to the security of the entire region, and Egypt's multifaceted approach, combining diplomacy, humanitarian efforts and military support, aims to address the complex challenges posed by the Syrian conflict. Through these efforts, Egypt hopes to contribute to a future where Syria can rebuild and thrive once more. Egypt's support for the Syrian army, however, is not without its complexities and challenges. It requires a delicate balancing act, as Cairo seeks to avoid alienating the Syrian opposition, while also preventing the Assad regime from consolidating its grip on power through military means. Egypt's ultimate goal is to facilitate a political transition that preserves Syria's territorial integrity and prevents the country from becoming a haven for extremist groups. The deployment of Egyptian troops to Syria, while frequently speculated upon, remains a remote possibility fraught with numerous challenges. The Egyptian military, while formidable, is primarily structured for conventional warfare and counterinsurgency operations within its own borders. Deploying troops to a complex and volatile battlefield like Syria would stretch its capabilities and expose Egyptian soldiers to significant risks. Moreover, the financial burden of such an intervention would be substantial, further straining Egypt's already fragile economy. The logistical challenges of deploying and sustaining a significant military force in a war-torn country like Syria are also immense and daunting. The Egyptian government is acutely aware of these constraints and has so far refrained from committing ground troops to the Syrian conflict. The potential deployment of Egyptian troops to Syria has been a subject of much speculation and debate. This idea has sparked numerous discussions among military experts, political analysts, and the general public. The complexities of such a move are vast, and the implications are far-reaching. Proponents argue that such a move would bolster the Syrian army's capabilities, help stabilize the country, and counter the influence of Iran and its allied militias. They believe that Egyptian involvement could serve as a balancing force in the region, potentially leading to a more stable Middle East. Additionally, supporters suggest that this could strengthen Egypt's geopolitical standing and showcase its military prowess on an international stage. However, the logistical and financial hurdles of such an operation are significant. The challenges of transporting troops, equipment, and supplies over long distances cannot be underestimated. Establishing supply lines in a conflict zone like Syria would be a monumental task, requiring meticulous planning and coordination. The financial burden of such an endeavor would also be immense, with costs potentially running into billions of dollars. Egypt's military, while one of the largest in the region, is not designed for prolonged foreign interventions. Its primary focus has always been on defending its own borders and maintaining internal security. The training and equipment of Egyptian forces are tailored to conventional warfare and counter-terrorism operations, not extended deployments in foreign lands. This raises questions about the readiness and adaptability of the Egyptian military for such a mission. Its equipment and training are primarily geared towards conventional warfare and counter-terrorism operations within its own borders. This specialization means that a shift to a different type of conflict such as the one in Syria would require significant adjustments. The Egyptian military would need to undergo extensive retraining and re-equipping to effectively operate in the Syrian theater, which would be both time-consuming and costly. Deploying and sustaining a large force in Syria amidst a complex, multi-sided conflict would require a significant shift in strategy, logistics, and resources. The Syrian conflict is characterized by its multifaceted nature, with numerous factions and foreign powers involved. Navigating this intricate landscape would demand a high level of strategic acumen and flexibility from the Egyptian military. The logistical demands alone, such as maintaining supply lines and ensuring troop rotations, would be a formidable challenge. Financially, Egypt is grappling with its own economic challenges. The country has been facing a range of economic issues, including high unemployment rates, inflation, and a significant budget deficit. These domestic economic pressures make the prospect of funding a foreign military intervention even more daunting. The financial strain of such an operation could exacerbate existing economic problems and lead to further instability within Egypt. The country is heavily reliant on foreign aid and has been implementing austerity measures to address its budget deficit. These measures have included cuts to public spending and subsidies, which have been met with resistance from the population. The reliance on foreign aid also means that Egypt's financial independence is limited, and any significant increase in military spending could jeopardize the aid it receives. This delicate balance between domestic needs and foreign ambitions is a critical factor in the decision-making process. A military intervention in Syria would place a substantial strain on its finances, potentially diverting resources from essential domestic programs. The funds required for such an operation could otherwise be invested in vital areas such as healthcare, education, and infrastructure development. This diversion of resources could have long-term consequences for Egypt's social and economic development, affecting the quality of life for its citizens. Moreover, the political will for such an intervention within Egypt is uncertain. The decision to deploy troops abroad is a contentious one, with various political factions holding differing views. Some politicians may see the potential benefits of increased regional influence, while others may prioritize domestic stability and economic recovery. The lack of a clear consensus makes it challenging to move forward with such a significant military commitment. Public opinion is divided on the Syrian conflict, and there is a degree of wariness towards entanglement in another costly and protracted foreign intervention. Many Egyptians are concerned about the human and financial costs of such a move, especially given the country's current economic situation. The memories of past conflicts and their toll on the nation also play a role in shaping public sentiment. This division in public opinion adds another layer of complexity to the decision-making process. The Egyptian government would have to carefully weigh the potential benefits against the significant risks and costs involved. This decision is not one to be taken lightly, as it would have far-reaching implications for Egypt's military, economy, and society. The government must consider all aspects, from logistical challenges and financial burdens to political ramifications and public opinion. Only with a thorough and balanced assessment can a sound decision be made regarding the potential deployment of Egyptian troops to Syria.